So it's gonna be a short meeting.
Left the office at 6.
If I may suggest,
You're obviously far, right?
thank you.
How's it?
See, if I'm out of there before 4 or after 6, it's fine. There's no traffic. I'll leave here like 4:30 or 5 is the worst. So I just figure I'll stay there until 6 o'clock, and then I'll leave when I come here. So when you're trying to get home earlier, and then you have to sit home.
I mean, if you leave at 6, you fly in.
Yeah, pretty much. I left a couple minutes after 6, I had time to get gas. Pulled into the parking lot like 1:02. I was checking emails before I came up.
I think it's a good use. I live right by them. It's a good property.
Most of these people, I asked them,
Residents?
they live in the development
Yeah,
to the
2 of them I
west,
know, yeah.
Wedgewood Gardens.
Yeah.
But
That should have no impact.
That's a multi-family building.
The west?
No, this
The
is.
west, the people
Yeah.
from to the west.
No, it's single family.
Yeah, they're single family, but it's, I mean, it's multi-units.
Yeah. Should have no bearing
Wedgewood
on it.
Gardens.
I don't have any bearing. I think it's a good use for the property.
Interesting to hear what they have to say, but
Well, sometimes people have questions on like
Yeah.
entry points and how it's going to look. And
yeah.
And they didn't want to connect the streets. So, because there's a street in Wedgewood Gardens that goes east and west, and
yeah.
it would connect the street right here. Comes in like that.
There's not, yeah.
They don't want to connect.
But this is on the corner.
Yeah, but
This is on 143rd. So this is on this parcel here.
well, if you look, the people that are out here live. They live here. They live right here. The people that are out here, they live here.
Yeah, I know 2 of them. Yeah.
In Wedgewood Gardens.
Right.
And there's a street that runs right. When you go in this way.
She got
That street that goes there, and then there's a Lucas Culture. They didn't want to connect those streets. They didn't want to connect.
easy. Oh.
You
Yeah.
can't make them, so.
Give me $5 a barrel. Are you following the Final Four?
No.
Loyola's in, man.
Yeah, I know they're in there. Yeah.
What do you need? You forget something?
No, I needed my microphones.
You don't look like Miss Turley at all.
Looks like they started on the roundabout
That
out
looks
front.
like it's on the button board, isn't it?
Sort of like construction is out front downtown.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 27th Planning Commission for Orland Park. And before we start the meeting, if you'd say the pledge with us, we'd appreciate it. Thanks.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We do not have any minutes from the last meeting. I can see why. We'll have them at the next, possibly. Thank you very much. So we're going to go right to public hearings. And the first one is number 2017-0541, Cobblestone, rezoning, site plan subdivision, elevations, landscape plan, and special use permit with modifications for a 21-unit residential plan development. Ms. Turley, is this one yours?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, the petitioner's purpose is to construct 21 condominium units at the northwest corner of 143rd Street and 80th. It's about a 4-acre site. In the comprehensive plan, it's in the Silver Lake North Planning District. Currently, it is zoned E1 Estate Residential, and the petitioner is requesting a rezone to R4 Mixed Residential Zoning District. They're proposing multifamily units, 1.5-story townhomes, both duplex and triplex buildings. existing access from 80th Avenue and 143rd Street, a new private road to access the individual units on a new 142nd place. They will require 6 special use code modifications that I'll go into some detail in a moment. This is the development process for approving new development, and the petitioner is in the due process portion, and now they're before Plan Commission for recommendation. After Plan Commission makes their recommendation, it will go on to the Development Services Planning and Engineering Committee, which will also make a recommendation, and on to the Village Board of Trustees. For the 3rd meeting, they make the actual, give the actual approval for the project. After that, we still have a final engineering approval. There'll be a development agreement. They'll need building permits, construction of the units, and associated inspections, and then the project to be closed out. So they're moving through the approval process. A little bit of history on this site. This is the 4-acre development site. Currently, it has homes on it, 2 homes and accessory structures. It's been used for many years in this estate residential zoning category. There are quite a few mature trees, particularly on the eastern portion of the site, many that will have to be removed to accommodate the construction of the new units. Wedgewood Glen townhomes abut to the west. There's also on the other side of 80th, in 2007, a 5-lot single-family residential subdivision was approved. However, it was never constructed. This is the comprehensive plan for the Silver Lake North Planning District. The site in question is located right here. This is identified in the comprehensive plan as a neighborhood center. And this site is called out as appropriate for mixed use, neighborhood mixed uses, which includes multifamily. This is an aerial kind of looking at what's around the project site, which is shown in red. To the west, again, are the Wedgewood townhomes, quadruplexes. At least most of them are, at least along this stub here. And then to the west of that is the Wedgewood Commercial Center, which is zoned as a business district. You'll also note a pattern of other R4 multifamily developments around intersections. The transportation system, again, 143rd Street, it's the IDOT arterial. 80th Avenue, a village collector, controlled by a 2-way stop at this intersection and a traffic light at 82nd. You can see the predominant land use in the area is single-family residential, and actually if you look back at the comprehensive plan, you can see the extent of single-family residential in this area. The site, though, is buffered from the single family to the north by an existing village pond, and to the south by 143rd Street. The only residential uses that it abuts directly are the other multifamily units to the west. This is a bird's eye. Gives you a better picture of what's around it. Up here is the Wedgewood Commons Park. It's the nearest neighborhood park to the project site. And again, you can see the Wedgewood Glens townhomes, the commercial center and bank, the other multifamily nearby, and the single family. This is the proposed site plan. There'll be 9 buildings that face inward to a new 142nd Place, a private road that is stubbed at the end for turnarounds. The site, there's not a lot of choice in the way this site is configured in order to accommodate these townhomes. This is very similar to the way this portion of Wedgewood Glens is configured. The preference, staff's preference would have been to connect these two roads. However, according to the petitioner, they weren't able to get permission to do that from the other landowner. And as well, there were engineering challenges, of course, not to mention the storm water, the detention that would be in the way, and other grading challenges to making the connection. So the buildings face inward, as do the Wedgewood Glen townhomes, onto the private street. There are driveways to each unit. So for each unit, you've got 2 interior parking spaces in the garage, as well as 2 exterior. And the street is 27 foot wide, which meets code minimums, and there should be room for overflow on-street parking as well. You might notice that there are no parkways to these sidewalks. There are sidewalks on both sides, but they do not have parkways. The site is very shallow, and there was not a way to fit everything in, so they are asking for a modification to allow the carriage walks 4 foot wide without parkways. So also the detention pond is located to the west, and there will be patios for each unit, backyard patios, partially covered concrete patios. Preliminary engineering plan, this is the grading plan that shows your basic drainage patterns along the rear property lines down to the detention pond, which then overflows into the existing village pond. There were efforts made initially to combine the detention, just put it into the village pond by expanding it, but there were just too many engineering challenges to achieving that, including an existing village sewer right along the property line that made grade changes difficult. So that's why the separate detention pond is shown. And the overflow, one of the advantages to having the detention pond here is that it provides a buffer between the existing units and the new units. One other thing to mention is the 143rd Street sidewalk. Currently, it is below 143rd Street grade-wise, and in the construction and the regrading of this site, it will be raised to meet or be above 143rd Street. One thing to note here is there are several units that are potential lookout units to the rear. There's a street view of the 143rd Street sidewalk. These are the elevations. This is the duplex. As I mentioned, there's both duplex and triplex units. Most of the duplex units back up to the pond and overlook the pond. This is the front. It has a residential character to it, 1.5 story. It looks like 1.5 story. Actually, these are 1-story units, but they appear to be 1.5 story. And they include some architectural detailing to kind of help break up the roof lines, some dormers and gables and hip roof. These units are going to vary a bit, and it's going to be up to the purchaser to determine the exact floor plan and the details, such as some you see the transom windows, bay windows. They aren't identical, and exactly how they're going to be configured on the site depends on the purchaser's preferences. They include the decorative steel garage doors. Building materials, primarily brick. They meet village requirements for brick. There's some variation in materials on the architectural detailing on the roof. It's engineered wood, siding, and shingles. Dimensional asphalt shingles for the roof. And again, the steel garage doors. This is the rear. Most of these will back up to the pond. There's one that will back up to 143rd Street. The architecture has more detail to it than you usually see on a rear elevation. And this is because they're going to be highly visible from the street. You see the same detailing, the dormers, the gables that you saw on the front. And you can see the partially covered porches. You can also see some of the variation in the units. Triplex elevations, this is the front. These units will back up to 143rd Street, right at the corner there. There will be 3 of the triplex units. Similar appearance to the duplexes. And same with the triplex rear elevations. Similar detailing. The side elevations, a little less detailing. Most of them are going to be just facing each other, so they won't be highly visible. One of the recommended conditions of approval is to ask for enhancements on the one unit that sides up to 80th Avenue, since it will be highly visible. And a little bit of, they'll change a little bit depending on which unit is selected. These are the building materials, a traditional red brick, and the siding, gray-colored detailing for the siding on the roof line, the charcoal roof, shingles, and the white and the gray trim. Fairly neutral colors. This is the landscape plan. The code does require landscaping, and there will be a landscape buffer around the periphery of the site. There will also be a decorative metal fence to screen the units from the streets along 143rd Street and around up 80th Avenue. There will be street trees added. There's not a parkway on 142nd Place, but instead there will be at least one tree for every unit. Detention pond will be planted with native grasses. The Wedgwood townhomes, it appears that they recently constructed a privacy fence along this property line here as well. Kind of a close-up of the foundation plantings that will be included around each unit and the detention basin seating. Tree mitigation, they were required to submit a tree survey, which they did. 374 trees were surveyed. They have identified 94 that will require mitigation. Whether or not a tree requires mitigation depends on the species, the condition, and the size. We are asking for preliminary landscape approval tonight, but there will be a later final landscape approval after final engineering is completed and the details of the required tree mitigation, and it will be determined at that time. And it will also be addressed under the development agreement. The buildings on the site will be demolished. So when a residential development is developed, a contribution to the park system is required. And in this case, because it's only a 4-acre site and it won't generate that many people, staff is recommending cash in lieu of required parkland. However, because there is a nearby neighborhood park, we've added a condition of approval that at least some of the fee that's paid by the developer be directed to improvements at this nearby park. This will benefit not only the new residents, but the surrounding neighborhood that would be the most impacted by the development. So the approvals required for this development: the rezoning to R4, site plan approval, a subdivision which will involve the consolidation of the two existing parcels on the site into one, and then there will be condominium ownership lots around each footprint of the buildings. Elevations, preliminary landscape plan, and the special use permit for the planned development. Code modifications that have been requested. One is to reduce the building to building and building to property side setbacks from 25 feet to 20 feet. You can see on this map, that is the space on this plan, the space between units. To increase the cul-de-sac length from the code limits cul-de-sacs to 400 feet. This will be 550 feet. But again, it's really difficult. There aren't a lot of choices in configuring this site. You don't want a curb cut onto 143rd Street. And there's not room for a full street with a cul-de-sac. It would not be developable under those conditions. To increase the maximum pond slope from 4-to-1 to 3-to-1. This is basically making the sides of the pond a little bit steeper, and this is to discourage the addition of retaining walls in the pond to increase capacity. Also requesting a reduced pond setback from a required 25 feet to a minimum of 9 feet. You'll notice that they do have the building setback from the high water line 25 feet and a minimum of 30 feet to the existing buildings to the west. They have a 15-foot maintenance strip around most of the site. It's as narrow as 9 feet in this location, but that's also the spillover to the existing village pond. As I discussed before, they've requested a tree mitigation modification, and also to reduce the parkway and sidewalk requirements. Incremental improvements are required to help offset the impact of new development, and a couple of the things that this proposal offers that's above and beyond basic code requirements. One is the scale of the architecture. R4 multifamily, comes in a variety of flavors and styles and architectural styles, and this, I do believe, blends better with the residential neighborhood around it. Also, they're offering an increased rear building setback from 143rd Street beyond code requirements that will allow for a larger buffer from 143rd Street. So overall, the project conforms to the village's comprehensive plan, the land development code, and the policies for this area, with the exception of those listed modifications. And that concludes staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Early. Good report, as usual. Appreciate it. If our petitioner is in the room and he would like to make any comments about staff's report, or he has any kind of issues that he'd like to talk about, please step forward to the microphone and we'll swear you in and listen to your questions.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and matters before this commission?
I do.
Would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name's John Berry. I'm with McNaughton Development, 111 South 220 Jackson Street, Burridge, Illinois.
Thank you, John.
Yep. Thanks for having us tonight. Thank you for the staff report. It really covered the proposal in detail. We are the contract purchaser for the property. Again, our plan is to construct 21 units on this property, primarily ranch homes, a couple master bedroom first floor units. We really see the target market for this product being the move down buyer in town, a person selling their bigger house and wanting the first floor living. Downsize, exactly. So all the improvements in the subdivision will be private. It will be a maintenance-free community, meaning the homeowners association will take care of all the outside elements for the homeowners. So, just a couple things. Some of the things that were touched on to make the site more attractive. The naturalized pond, the fencing, the landscape buffers, and the upgraded elevations will all play into being a very attractive product for that downsized buyer. So, we just want to be available then to answer the rest of any of your questions tonight, and hopefully get a positive recommendation for the board.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your comments, without a doubt. This is a public hearing, and it looks as though there's some folks from John Q. Public in the room that possibly might want to speak and say something about the petition. But if you'd be so kind as to, if indeed there are individuals that are going to say the same thing about traffic or whatever the case might be, that person can come up to the microphone after the person in front of them has talked about it and say, I concur with the guy before me, so that we don't have any redundancy, and of course, time being an issue. With that said, anybody that would like to speak, please come forward. We're going to have ladies first, sir. Thank you. And we're going to swear you in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth matters before this commission?
I certainly do.
Would you please state your name and address?
My name is Ruth Fakeless. I live at 7949 West Cambridge Drive, Orland Park, which is kitty corner of this unit. I have a couple of things that were stated. First of all, having lived there for 17 years, I am very well aware of the fact that 80th Avenue is flooded due to the first pond. So I have concerns about the second pond, especially when she stated it'll overflow into the first pond. So I just want you to take note of that, okay? The first pond goes into 80th Avenue. So let's watch the second pond. This other thing I really am concerned about here is there is no parking for visitors. You've got holidays, graduations, birthdays. Are they all supposed to park on 80th Avenue? I
Okay,
mean, where's the guest parking?
We'll get that answered for you for sure.
Okay, I will let that go. If I have another question, can I come back up if it's different?
I don't know.
Okay, let me read my note real quick. Okay, I'm a
course you can.
librarian, I ask questions.
Of
you know?
course you can.
Okay, thank
Let's
you.
have our petitioner come up to the microphone. We're going to tackle this flood pond question that you have, but just for the audience's information, the project has preliminary engineering approval already. Our engineers have been out there, and if there was any type of danger for flooding or whatever the case might be, preliminary engineering would have never been approved. John, do you want to come up and maybe say something in regards to that?
I'm going to have my engineer address it.
All right, we're going to have to swear your engineer in. Thank you very much.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth that matters before this commission?
I do.
And could you state your name and address for us?
Scott Schreiner, 9930 West 190th Street, Mokina. So all of our stormwater is being directed to the stormwater detention facility on the west end of the site. And the water, if it were to overtop, would overtop to the existing stormwater facility. The actual release from the detention facility is going to discharge directly into the existing 48-inch storm sewer pipe. So all of our water will be retained on site for the 100-year storm event per village code. It will then discharge into the existing 48-inch storm sewer pipe, which bypasses and flows under 143rd Street and continues to the west. So our discharge will not be directly into the existing stormwater facility. Again, it would just be overflows, which would be consecutive storms in a row, which...
Well, code has it for 100-year storm anyway.
That is
I mean, you're prepared for that.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Do you want to tackle the guest parking as well, Scott? Or do we want to bring John back up?
So, I think as was stated earlier, the parking that's provided on site, the two spaces in the garage, 2 spaces in the driveway meet, or I believe it actually exceeds the parking code for this type of development. There are a few additional parking spaces in between each unit on the street. There's over 40 feet, so you could at least park 2 cars between each driveway without blocking any driveways between each building. So there's a considerable amount of overflow parking beyond the 4 parking spots on the per unit basis.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, please. Please come to the microphone. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Turley,
Can I
think,
actually see where the additional parking is? Where's additional parking?
Ms. Turley, if you can give us the arrow, there we go.
Along the street,
Between the buildings.
between the driveways.
Yep, or driveways, better answer.
Oh, that's not grass between the driveways? That's
This is
asphalt?
asphalt right here. This is 142nd Place. That's
Right.
the private road that
Right.
accesses the units. These are the driveways.
Right. But I thought that you stated that 142nd Street was actually at its minimum width.
It's 27 feet wide, which is the code required minimum for a street width.
Right.
Yes.
So if you park cars on 142nd,
Yeah, for that wide of a street, you can have some on-street parking.
one side.
Um,
Okay, 'cause
John, thanks, dude.
The street is wide as any other typical neighborhood street in Orland Park. It's, so.
Understandable. Thank you, sir. This gentleman right here, you had your hand up?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in matters before this commission?
I do.
Would you please state your name and address?
Joseph Rossi, 14229 Wedgewood, Glens Drive, Orland Park, and I reside in one of those Wedgewood town units that are right next to that pond. And I wanted to bring up to the commission, the planning commission here, that one of the things that has existed over, and I've been there 17 years, the buildings were built in 93 and 94. Many of the buildings over the years have had to have jackups and stabilizing cement core units put into the buildings because shortly, within, I guess, 3 years after the original construction, they started to sink. The builder came in, did some repairs, and over the years, within the last 3 years, several units have been stabilized and jacked up with a lot of cement and a lot of expense to owners. My concern is that this builder, whoever, that they do a good job in terms of going into the ground and do some core testing so that they can get down to some stable rock. Because if these buildings are built, and it sounds like they will be built, I would hate to be one of those owners 3 years from now, as I started to see cracks in the ceiling, on the garage, and bricks as the building started to settle. And more than just settle, but actually sink. That's my concern for that location.
Thank you, Joe. Your concern for your new neighbors is most admirable.
You're quite welcome.
We're going to have our fellows from the petition.
The only other concern I have
Oh,
is.
I'm sorry.
We have had some snow this winter, and I look at that street, and I know in our little development, we end up piling snow 5 feet, 10 feet in terms of the accumulation we had this winter. And if they have parking 2 cars on the driveways or somebody parking on the street and we get another 8 or 10, 12 inches of snow, where's that all going to go?
I think we can answer that one pretty
Okay.
quick. With the 2-inch snow rule here in Orland Park, if there's 2 inches, we can't park on the streets. Is that correct?
This is a private street.
Okay, so it's going to be the problem of the folks that are there if they're parking cars. I don't think it's going to affect the neighbors.
No, it won't affect us, but,
Okay.
you
I
know.
love your consideration
Okay,
for the
no
new guy.
problem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joe. John, do you want to tackle this thing in regards to
That's a great question.
the settling that's taking place in the neighbors? It's not predicted to happen in your,
Yeah, no, I appreciate the heads up. I'm sorry you're going through that right now, but even long before we got to this point in the petition, we do our due diligence on the soil materials. We take cores, and there's nothing that would show us in any of our cores that we'd have a problem like that, so.
preliminary engineering again approved, they would have picked up on something like that, I would
Well,
think.
our due diligence on the soils material would have. Yep.
Thank you, sir, very much. Yes, sir.
We didn't answer the question. Let's know.
How many still?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in matters before this commission?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address.
Terry Chenore, Chenore, 14251 Wedgewood Glens Drive, Orland Park, Illinois. My concern is for the commission to know that at one time that there was a gas pump next to the attached garage at 8030 143. It has since been removed this past fall. And I know with the gas pump there, I'm sure the tank is still in the ground. And my main concern is that the planning commission knows aware of it, because I already told the development services about the gas pump there already, but I want the commission to know about the pump with the tank that's in the ground, which is EPA.
Thank you for your comments, Terry. I'm going to put this one to Khurshid and Jane. If indeed you did talk to Development Services, what was our response to that?
Yeah, our inspectors are aware of what the resident had reported, and the Orland Fire has also been notified of a potential tank. So, at the time of demolition, they're going to need to take a closer look at this.
Okay.
But we're aware of the issue.
Village is aware of it, Terry.
Yes, because I know being EPA, that the ground's got to be cleaned out.
They won't let the project happen.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing, what Joe brought up, Rossi, my wife and I had to pay big money to have our place, Permaseal, come in just this past year, 17, and they went down to 60-some feet, 9 of them piers put in for bedrock, for the sinking, the settling in that property. So as far as getting, like Joe says, Rossi, getting good soil samples as well, should be well taken.
Our petitioner has given us the greatest confidence that he's done that already for sure.
Yeah,
So-
needed to.
Yes.
Thanks.
That's
Thank
all
you,
I
sir.
have.
Anyone else? Madame?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth
yes,
in
I do.
matters? Your name and address, please.
Sandra Gascoigne, 8001 Cambridge Drive. There's 4 homes, which I am one of the homes, directly across from the old property. In our backyard face the detention pond.
Sandra, excuse me. Jane, can you put that up? Thank you.
Go, maybe
There you go.
Here?
I'm on the corner right in back of the detention pond, 80th and Cambridge Drive.
Is that right there?
The blue roof?
Yeah, there
Yeah,
you
the
go.
blue roof, and there's 4 of us there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the new units, will they be facing us, or the back?
The back.
The back. And will those tall trees remain, or will they be removed?
I'll let the petitioner answer that one.
Trees to the north, is that what we're talking about here?
To the
Ms. Turley?
south,
The north.
to the,
North side of the project.
We're envisioning the trees that are on our property having to be moved to the requirements of the statute.
Okay.
so the back of the units will be facing the pond then, did you say?
Yes.
Yes.
And will there be a buffer from the pond in our homes?
A new landscape buffer will be required.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Tom Quinn.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in matters before this commission?
I do.
Thank you. Now can we have your name and address?
Tom Quinn, 14211 Wedgewood Glens Drive.
Tom, if you'll pull the black one a little closer to you, the skinny one here to your left.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that'll help you out a little
Okay.
bit. There you go.
We are directly on the pond on the corner. If you just follow the Wedgewood Glens, and I don't know where your engineers are, but we get water all the way up to the porch this last fall, all the way to the porch. Now, if there's an overflow, I don't know how the pond is going to handle it, because we've been here 10 years, and every time we have the heavy rain, we get flooding. We don't get into the house, but it gets all the way up to the porch. Additional water will be very damaging. I got the pictures to prove it if you want to see them. I'll bring them.
Jane, again, we have preliminary engineering on our project. The pond that this gentleman is talking about, is it going to be affected by what we do with this piece of property?
I think that's a better question for the petitioner's
I knew that
engineer.
was going to happen. I didn't go to you first. Thank you, sir.
Scott.
So, as I was describing before, the release from our pond is going to flow into the existing storm source system, which will bypass the existing pond. So with this development, let's say that we even discharge directly into this existing pond. With our development retaining the runoff from our site, we would actually be decreasing the peak
amount of
flow
flow in
water
the pond, yeah.
that went into that pond. But having said that, we're actually going to be bypassing that pond with the allowable release rate. So it's going to be all enclosed in storm sewer pipe, and it will bypass that pond. So our entire 4 acres will no longer be tributary to that pond, which it is in the existing condition.
Okay. Thank you. Answered satisfactorily. Sir?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth that matters before the commission?
Yes, sir.
Would you please state your name and address?
Richard Farron, 14202 Camden. I live on the pond. It has flooded. I moved there in 13. It has flooded 143rd Street.
The pond.
It has flooded 80th Avenue. Are you aware of that? Yes. Okay. I was in sewer and water for more years than I hate to tell you. Worked for major developers. Biggest issue is the MWRD. Have they checked this pond yet? I know this is preliminary.
You mean the retention pond that our petitioner is going to provide, not the one that's
Exactly.
there?
Because no
Ms.
matter
Turley?
what he says about the water not going into the pond, it goes into the same pipes that the ponds use. Excuse me. Thank you.
We'll get an answer here.
So we have not submitted to the MWRD at this point. That usually comes during the final engineering design of the project and the permitting process that we have to go through the MWRD. So that will be a final engineering design process when we receive those permits from the MWRD.
In order for the project to go through, we have to have final engineering approval.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Can I ask Scott a question?
Certainly.
So, Scott, I guess the question is just in simple English. We have a flooding situation. We're going to put storm sewers there that will go out, I think, to 143rd Street. And the issue is the pond also goes out there. So what are we doing that will mitigate the existing situation?
So the only thing that I could offer up that we would be doing to mitigate the existing situation is we would be taking our stormwater discharges and
Diverting it.
eliminating them from the adjacent pond. So the way the storm sewer system works is there's a 48-inch pipe that runs along our north property line, and it runs underneath 80th Avenue. It ties into a 60-inch storm sewer that then runs along the north property line of the vacant parcel to our east. The pond discharge actually goes through a restricted pipe, an overflow pipe, along the right-of-way of 80th Avenue, and then crosses 80th Avenue before it ties into the same system that we're tying into. So our water will discharge to the east side of 80th Avenue, downstream of the restricted flow coming out of the existing village pond on 80th Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have had, in my humble opinion, satisfactory explanation in regards to storm. We'll have our commissioners talk about it a little bit later. If there isn't any more comment on storms, Okay, hang on, let the lady go first, please.
I just want to point out one thing for those of us who've seen 80th Avenue flood, that when the pond goes over, it goes over 80th Avenue into that next vacant lot, which is behind my house. So he just said the pipe's going to go under 80th, or it's already there? I don't know. It's already there, under 80th. So if it's already there, it's not abating anything. If there's a real bad storm, it's abating now, but it's not abating on a bad storm, because that already flows into 80th and goes right into the homes beyond it. Okay, just so you're aware.
Yeah, we're actually very aware of it. So our client had the piece of property to the east under contract as well. So we actually evaluated that property prior to just focusing on the western piece of property. It's a very unique system that's going on out there, the existing condition system. So the overflow from the village pond does cross 80th Avenue, and it flows through the property to the east. Once you get onto that property to the east, it's hard to see because of all the trees, but there's actually quite a deep ravine that runs through that property.
A creek.
So that overland flow falls into that ravine. Flows through the property to the southeast corner of that property, where it's picked up in another storm sewer system, which is a separate storm sewer system altogether than the 48-inch and 16 storm sewer that I was talking about earlier that our storm pipes discharge to. So there's a lot going on out there, but the E1 parcel, the overflow will flow through the parcel that's got the E1 labeled through it. It flows through that parcel to the southeast corner of it, where it gets picked up in a separate storm sewer pipe altogether from the 48 and 60-inch. It's a separate system altogether that then flows underneath 143rd Street. So it's kind of a complicated situation. It seems like there's a lot of different piping that was built through different developments through time. But that's how it functions.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. I appreciate your comments. Again, if there are no further comments in regards to flooding, because I think Mr. Schreiner has answered all of our questions in regards to how this piece of property is going to affect the surrounding area, and the thing that we're talking about tonight is this development. No developments to the east, south, or the north. It's just this development on 143rd Street. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in matters before this commission.
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Paul Nurchi, 7960 Cascade Court, Orland Park. I have nothing to say about the flooding or anything of that nature. I want to talk about the property is currently zoned residential and townhouses. Is that correct?
It's currently zoned E1 Estate Residential, which is a single-family zoning district, so they're requesting that it be rezoned to R4 Mixed-Use Residential.
But currently, are townhouses allowed to be put on the property?
Not currently.
No.
It has to be rezoned to do that.
All right. All the homes that are north, south, and west, they're all single-family dwelling homes currently, okay? Not west, but to the north, to the east, and to the south, they're all single-family dwelling homes. And it looks to me that this property, there's too many units on this property, way too many units. There's no beautification, there's no room in between each unit. They're all next to each other. And I don't think it's going to make the neighborhood look better and could bring down property values.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I could ask Ms. Turley, but I think we already know the answer to that. The site plan meets code and the requirements that are required by the Village of Orland Park. John, do you have any comment you'd like to make on that?
Well, I think the main point is, yes, the property does have to be rezoned. However, our zoning request matches the comprehensive plan. The zoning request matches, or actually is proposing less units or less density that's allowed by the comprehensive plan. Our lot coverage, proposed lot coverage, is less than what's proposed by the comprehensive plan. So I think we've done a very good job of proposing a development that's be suitable for this site. And as far as bringing property values down, I can't disagree more. We're talking about townhomes that will be sold for in excess of $400,000. So, I think this is a very good proposal. I think it'll be a fine addition to the village, and everybody will be very happy when it's complete.
Thank you, John. A final comment from our gentleman.
I just have one question for the engineer. Would he kind of explain to me the sloping, why he needs it? You know, this is a village pond. We have fishermen all summer. They walk around the pond. Grandkids, I got 20, they do it. What's the slope mean, and what is the flat maintenance? And will they be able to continue what they do now? Because it is a village pond.
Are you talking about
I'm talking
their
about
pond?
the slope that he's talking about from the water to onto the property. The village owns the first, I think it's first 10 feet, do they not? They used to cut the grass, so they got to own it. They still come
This
every
pond
Tuesday.
here to the north?
I'm
the
talking
village,
about the whole pond.
Yeah, the existing village pond is entirely owned by the village.
Okay, and how far do they own up? How far from the water do they own up into the land?
They own the entire pond and the land around it.
And how far is that? But he's looking to only go 9 feet. He wants it cut all the way back to 9 feet.
Excuse me, sir. John, if you'd be so kind.
Maybe to address your question, we're not going to do anything.
You said a slope of 3 foot. You're going to go from 4 to 3.
We're talking about the slope on.
Microphone, fellas, we can, because only
Be
because.
recorded.
Yeah, we're not going to be doing any work to the existing pond. The slopes that are being referred to in the staff report are the slopes that are on our new proposed pond on our side.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Well, and explain to me why you want it cut to 9 foot. You want to measure from where?
You want to talk about the dimensions?
The setback.
Well, you're requesting this, and that's all I'm asking.
There's one point.
If, give him a chance to answer, sir. Sir, give him a chance to answer, please.
There's one point of our pond at the north end that our setback is 9 foot versus 25.
Point that out, Gene.
Could you show that, Jane, with a pointer, that there's
right
only one part on the pond where it's 9 feet?
Look at the northwest
Thank you.
corner.
It's right, just right from
Just
there
there.
to there.
That's the only part, sir,
Yeah.
Not the whole pond.
not the whole pond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No. And he's
Our last question. Khurshid, do you want to say something?
I just want to clarify that the space we have around the existing pond that the gentleman and his grandkids used to walk around, it is untouched. The distance we're talking about, that 9 foot, is from petitioner's property to the edge of the high water line that we're talking about. So the existing pond and the walking area around that is untouched.
Untouched. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth that matters before the commission.
I do.
Name and address, please, for the record.
Linda Marie Chenor, 14251 Wedgewood Glens Drive, Orland Park. I'm in the townhouses. Is this a done deal?
No such thing in this town.
Well, it sort of sounds like it to, as a
The Planning
homeowner.
Commission is a recommending body. We have no authority whatsoever.
If you look back at this chart here, this
There you go.
shows
There's
where
the-
you are. The Plan Commission makes a recommendation, it goes to Development Services Committee, which is comprised of 3 board members. They preview the case and make a recommendation. And the third meeting, it goes to the Village Board of Trustees that make the final decision.
Me too.
All right. I have to comment, 21 units is a lot for that area. I mean, from where we're at, we have 15 units. We have the similar type of drive. As you drive in, you drive in one way. We have the parking issue. We have the snow issue, the water from that. I see this in these units. I've lived there since 2002, and I hope that you as a board are taking this in consideration. I mean, there are homes.
Preliminary engineering has been approved, and the petitioner said that they are building less units on the property than they could.
Well, because they were going to have the other side of the street at one time. It was two sides, and now it's just the one side, 21 units. At one time, it was across 80th also.
No.
Well, we had a,
That was a separate petition.
Separate petition altogether.
well,
This has nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with that.
okay, well, it was from McNaughton because we had to vote on, you know, that where they can come in through Wedgewood Glens through our street at that one time. But even 21 units is a lot of units. For that area, it's going to be very, very congested, and it's off 143rd Street. I mean, I live there and I see it, and I walk my dogs around the area all the time. As I walk by there, I think to myself, 21 units, where are they going to go? You know.
It would never be approved by our engineers if it didn't fit.
Well, you know, I am one of those, we spent $20,000 to have our home lifted, and it's a pretty sad, I'm more concerned about my area, but how can the soil be any different from my area to right across over the fence?
I don't mean to be rude, but I have a lot of faith in guys that go to school for 8 years. The engineers said it's okay. We have preliminary engineering approval on the site.
We had the same in our homes too, though. 2002, different year maybe.
That has nothing to do with this petition.
No, it's sad that it doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. We all set?
All set, I think. I appreciate all of the comments that have come from Johnson Public and obviously from our petitioner, who I think sufficiently answered the questions for our residents. But I'd like to have our planning commissioners give their take on the project. I'd just like to remind everybody, this particular project has preliminary engineering approval, and it has 18 conditions that this petitioner is going to have to meet for this project to go through committee and the Board of Trustees. And the petitioner didn't even mention them tonight. He's totally in line with the 18 conditions that the Village of Orland Park has put on this project. So, Commissioner John Paul, anything that you have to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. So the road is going to be a private road?
Yes,
So the village doesn't own it or maintain it?
correct.
That would be up to the homeowners association as far as snow plow. Okay, how are you gonna get like emergency vehicles, trucks, moving vans in and out of there? Because it doesn't look like there's any place to turn one around.
There is a hammerhead at the end of the street. We've used this similar kind of configuration in other subdivisions, like Bluff Point was one that had the hammerhead turnarounds. So that even if there's cars in the parking lot, there's a place to turn around at the end of the
So
street.
even if there's cars parked on 142nd place, if a moving van was to go, because I mean, obviously people are going to be moving in, they could back out or get out somehow, or a fire truck,
Fire would have never approved it.
you know, or an ambulance, or, I mean, so they've approved that,
Fire
they're okay
department
with
would
that?
never let it happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Question I had there. As far as the flooding goes, what's the frequency of flooding on 80th and on 143rd in that area? And what have we seen over the last few years?
We do not have that data readily available, but we certainly can look for that and provide that to you.
I mean, just from your knowledge, I mean, just flooding to the point where the street would have to be closed, or, you know, has that happened frequently? Do we know how often that happens?
Every 100-year rain.
It's probably happened more than once in 100 years, so that's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking, because it probably happened more than once in the last 100 years, so just a concern that I have about that. And from the engineer's standpoint, you're saying then that the water is going to flow not back into the retention pond, but it's going to flow in a different direction, so where it's not going to be making a problem worse than it is. I mean, what's done, it was there, is there, but as far as the retention pond, The water's not going to be going in that, it's going to be routing another way. Is that correct? Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. How about you, Commissioner Shalaby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. I thought that Mr. Rossi had a good question when it came to snow. Due to this being a private street and the fact that the private street wouldn't, of my understanding, fit within the code of having, they would be able to park with 2 inches of snow, where would the snow go in the event?
That would be up to the private landowner to work out the details of snow removal.
Yeah. Maybe Mr. Berry could help answer, or his engineer, because I really think it's a legitimate question. If you see the way that the road is and where they would store the snow.
Yeah, the plow contractor will have to place snow at the end of the street, far west end of the street, before you go to the pond, and they'll have to utilize the open spaces between the buildings, between the driveways of the end of the units.
I'm sure the residents are going to come up with a plan. It's their responsibility.
I think the only concern that I have is that they don't have to follow the village ordinance of not parking on the street with 2 inches of snow or greater due to the fact that it's a private road. So I just wanted to eliminate any concern for the current residents, because I thought Mr. Rossi had a good question as it pertains to the snow, especially with this past winter. I think people have more of a concern than normal.
I'm going to assume that the homeowners are going to want the convenience of their snowplow people, the same convenience that the village village public works have to keep cars off of the street in the events of the snow. I mean,
the association could put a sign in.
They could put a sign.
They can put in one post, 2 inches or more.
Yep.
Call Orland Police.
Right.
Yes, sir.
May I finish, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, please.
Yeah. Other than that, I think that the project adds great value. As a lifelong resident of Orland Park, and primarily in the North Orland corridor, we have and as a real estate broker in the area, we have a lack of supply of master bedroom, main level townhomes in the North Orland corridor, especially from a new construction standpoint. So I think that's great for the area. I do believe the project has nice character and elevation levels. It's also been nicely thought out regarding architectural touches, especially when it comes to the variations in the rear of the units. So thank you.
Commissioner Shalaby, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Murphy?
Well, I think that the petitioner has addressed all of the residents' concerns in great detail. I think that overall there's plenty of landscape buffering to the existing residential. The rezoning does conform to the comprehensive plan. I think the elevations are very attractive. I think they've used more architectural details than many townhomes. I think overall it looks like a good project for the area, so I'm in favor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Schuessler, if you'd be so kind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the statements of the prior commissioners. I don't think it is going to decrease property values at all. And I agree that there is a definite need for this type of unit. I moved from a tri-level house to a unit like this a year and a half ago, and I had trouble finding a place, and I had to move because my wife was confined to a wheelchair. So there is a definite need for this type of housing that has master bedroom on the first floor. So I agree with the petitioner that there is a demand in the market for this type of unit, and I think the site is appropriate for it. It's got a pond to the north. There's a street to the east. There's another street to the south. And the only units that it's going to abut is the Wedgewood Glen units, and that's the same type of zoning. That's an R4 zone. So you got an R4 zone next to an R4 zone. My question for staff would be, do you know what the density is of the Wedgewood Glens development?
I do not know what the abutting property density is, but I know with this proposal, R4 allows up to 6 dwelling units per acre, and I believe this is 5.62 or right around there, so it is below,
It's below.
the 6. I think the Wedgewood is similar.
I believe it's similar, yes. Okay. They have 15 units, but we don't know how many acres. But it seems to me that if it's R4, it would be up to 6. Okay. A couple of questions. I have a concern with regard to the snow removal. When I was on the village board, I was chairman of Public Works, and snow was always a big issue. It has to go somewhere, whether it's a private street or a public street. The village trucks, if it's a public street, or the private contractor, if it's a private street, has to push the snow somewhere. It has to end up somewhere. And I see a problem with this development because there aren't a lot of places where you can store that snow. Commissioner Shalaby had a question with regard to snow and also with regard to access. I think you asked about access. It's easy to get into the site with a vehicle. Just drive in. The issue is getting out. How do you turn around? Obviously, you can do it in a driveway if there aren't any cars parked there, and if there aren't, then you've got the hammerhead. It seems to me that you're not going to get a moving truck to turn around in that hammerhead. It's just not going to happen. But that's the moving company's problem. They're going to have to probably back down to 400 feet down to 80th Avenue. Same with the fire trucks, but firemen are pretty good at backing up. They back into their firehouse every time they make a run. My question for staff and for the developer is, would it be possible to extend the road and the hammerhead to the west, to the edge of the pond, to the edge of the pond? And the reason I'm asking that is it would allow a little more room for turnaround. It would take the hammerhead a little bit farther to the west from those last units to the west on both the north and south side. And I think it would provide a place to put the snow. You could dump it in the pond. I don't know what the elevations are, but is that feasible? I'd ask the engineer that question, I guess. Mr. Schreiber, is it? Schreier?
Yeah,
Schreier.
So I guess a couple concerns. The road's about 3.5 feet above the high water level of the pond. So as we push the road out, we're going to have that drop off then on the road. So we would have to probably do some form of retaining wall at the end if we were to do that. The snow removal issue, I think, I feel like, so we get this asked a lot anytime we have a cul-de-sac bubble, really, whether it be private or public road. And one of the things that we're often asked to do is to provide a gap in the housing at the end of the cul-de-sac bubble. In a lot of instances, we're coming down a road like this, we have a cul-de-sac, and at the end, they want us to separate those homes to have some place to pile, and then they could push. So we felt fairly comfortable with the layout just because we had direct access to the pond. A lot of times these private firms come in with the smaller machines. They don't always have the big machines like the village has pushing snow. They come in with smaller ones that actually they could load and push. So we feel like that slope coming off the end of 142nd Place down into the pond is going to provide them quite a bit of available areas to, pile up snow during the larger snow events. In terms of extending the road.
Well, before you go any further, with where the road ends now, how far do they have to go to get to the pond, to get the snow into the pond? How many feet is it from the end of the road to?
So that line you're seeing on there that's called the high water line, that's 25 feet off the edge of the road because we're trying to maintain that 25-foot buffer every place. And then from that point, you got another probably 15 feet down to the bottom of the pond.
Okay.
So that's about a 25-foot gap. So they got about 25 feet just before they even get into the steeper slopes of the pond. So that area there is fairly level. It's a 2% slope. The first 20 to 25 feet is at 2%. So they have a fairly significant area right there before they hit that high water line, and it slopes down into the pond at a 3-to-1 slope.
The problem is getting to it from the end of the road. If that's grass, you're driving over the grass to get to the place where you're going to push the snow so it goes down into the pond. So I would ask the staff, there's 25 feet, can we give them a variance where they can extend the road into this 25 feet, so whoever's pushing the snow down the end of the street can get to the pond and let it go down the slope?
So Commissioner Sisler, I hear you what you're saying. Let us take a look at it. I think there is potential for extending it, but maybe not all the way, and then still find a way to put some kind of barrier that keeps that truck safe.
Right.
Right.
Or a car from going.
Yes.
Yes,
So
I understand
I
that.
think, yeah, I see the benefit that you're trying to point out.
Okay, a couple of other questions. There was a question about the landscaping along the north side, and I didn't quite understand the answer. There's quite a bit of vegetation along the north part of the property on the east side. Are you going to be able to save that, or are you going to have to level all of it and start over again? I'm talking about behind the old house.
Yes, any of the material that's going to be behind the old house, but yet on the current owner's property, will have to be removed to make the rear yard grading and the storm
Okay,
sewers work.
that's fine. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I got a couple of other questions. Hold on. Will the pond be a village pond or a private pond? Okay. Are we doing that with, what determines whether it's going to be village or private?
Well, it's a part, the whole thing is, it has an HOA, and the street's private. Usually in this kind of scenario, the pond would be private as well.
Okay. Couple of questions about the road. Is there going to be any curbing between the asphalt and the sidewalk? A typical roll curb?
Yes, 3-inch roll curb.
Okay. That's good, because otherwise the cars would be parking on the sidewalk. I always have problems with private streets, but I guess I'm not going to make that argument. It seems to make sense in this instance. And I believe Wedgewood Glens has a private street too, so. For the developer, will all of the units have first floor master bedroom?
Yes, everything will have first floor master.
Okay. How many soil borings did you do? There were questions regarding soil. You said you had checked out soil as part of your due diligence. How many soil borings did you do?
I believe we did 5.
Think that's enough for 4 acres?
It's typically more than we would do on 4 acres, yes.
Now that you know there's a problem next door, I would heartily recommend that you do a few more.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I spent 12 years on a school board. We built the building, we did soil borings, and the first change order that came in was for additional fill at one corner that hit poor soil, and it was 5 feet away from a soil boring. Soil boring was wonderful, 5 feet away, it was peat. And it cost us, it was not too bad, it was like $15,000, multi-million-dollar building, but now that you know from these folks here that there are problems next door, I would recommend you do some well soil borings.
Okay, thanks.
That's your call, though?
Right.
I think that's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Parisi.
I shared a lot of the concerns that some of my fellow commissioners have expressed, and I, in terms of parking and snow and whatnot, I feel they've been adequately answered. Obviously, this is a challenging 4-acre parcel, and you'll see that when we make our motions and everything, there's 2 pages of conditions that this developer is understood and accepts. As far as land, as far as density, we're allowed 6 units per acre. This is below the maximum density. There's plenty of natural buffers between existing residences and these new units that are going to be built. I feel that the water situation, while it's serious, and I understand why everybody's concerned, from what I'm made to understand, this particular project isn't exacerbating that situation whatsoever. It's diverting the water to the east and probably going out of their way so they wouldn't exacerbate this situation. Just on a personal, I hate to see all the beautiful mature trees go, but we do have a tree mitigation program here, and I'll be interested in seeing how we can address that. I do agree, I'd like to see the side of the building that faces 80th Avenue. I think that's rather bland. It would be nice to see that be a little more attractive from people going down 80th Avenue. Property values, I know that this developer, McNaughton, has a reputation for building some really outstanding properties, and I'm happy to hear what the price point is. I think that bodes very well for the remaining neighbors. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Parisi. I'll be very brief with my comments. This is the reason we have these things. We have John Q. Public and the neighbors come in and listen to what the petitioner says. And you have 6 commissioners up here that are part of a recommending body. There is no decision that's going to be made on this project this evening. As Ms. Turley pointed out, these gentlemen, per our recommendation, will then go to a committee, of which you are, via this chairman, cordially invited. You can go to the committee meeting. After that, once it leaves the committee meeting, it then goes to the board meeting, which you have another opportunity to voice your opinion. But as we found out tonight, I think that our petitioner and our engineers, one of them sitting in the audience, has made it real comfortable for us up here that all the questions in regard to your fears have been answered, that this particular petition, this particular project, is not going to increase anything that you've experienced before. And I think Commissioner Schuessler, John, you're scared to death now. So now you're going to put 400 more soil testings every 6 feet. He's going to check that out for sure. So I'm very confident that our petitioner is going to do the right thing for this project, and it's going to be an asset for the village of Orland Park. And this chairman will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Parisi.
I move to accept the findings of fact of this Plan Commission findings of fact set forth in the staff report dated March 27, 2018, and I move to recommend to the Village Board approval of the rezoning of the property from E1 Estate Residential to R4 Residential District.
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Please continue.
And I move to recommend to the Village Board approval of a preliminary site plan titled Preliminary Plat and Preliminary Engineering for Cobblestone by Design Tech Engineering Incorporated, Project 17-0033, dated 7/17/17, revised 3/5/18, subject to the following conditions. All changes must be made and conditions met prior to the board meeting. 1, meet all final engineering and building division requirements and approvals. 2, site plan elements, including building envelopes and locations, are conceptual only and must meet all land development code and building department requirements. 3, all signage is subject to separate sign permits from the building division. 4, after construction is completed, repair, replace all existing sidewalks that are damaged. 5, change preliminary plat side label to preliminary site plan. 6, pay cash in lieu of parkland and park cash as finalized at the time of development agreement. And 7, direct a portion of the code required developer park contribution to benefit nearby Wedgewood Park improvements as finalized at the time of the development agreement.
Second. Mr. Chairman, I would like to propose an amendment.
Please state the amendment that you're proposing to the petitioner, or to the motioner, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that an additional condition number 8 be added that would read as follows. If possible and acceptable to village staff, extend 142nd plates closer to the pond to facilitate the use of the pond for storage of snow in the winter.
Commissioner, I know you're not going to believe this, but Mr. Parisi, would you read your 8th condition that you were going to put in there?
Well, actually, I was going to do it at the end, but I do have another. It was that the petitioner will work with staff to resolve the hammerhead turn around concerning the snow and emergency vehicle adequacy issues. That I have.
He was going to put.
Is that okay? I'll just add that as number 8 here instead.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll add an 8th item here.
Would you read?
And I'll read it.
Read 8 once again.
Yeah, I'll read 8.
I withdraw my proposed amendment in favor of Commissioner Parisi's amendment.
Thank you. That the petitioner work with staff to resolve the hammerhead turnaround concerning the snow and emergency vehicle adequacy issues.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. I'm going to add just a small comment. That was not on the agreement for this evening. It was added because of what you chatted about, snow removal, and our Commissioner Schuessler. So we're listening. Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No nays. Please continue.
And I move to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of the building elevations titled Cobblestone prepared by W.K. Olson Architects Incorporated dated 8/8/17 and received 3/19/18, including all 4 sheets for all 4 sides of the duplexes and triplexes, subject to the following conditions. 1, provide further rooftop enhancements such as dormers or a gable on Unit 21 building side elevations that face 80th Avenue, similar to enhancements on the building rears. 2, comply with the village building code for building height. 3, provide a conceptual elevation for both sides of the proposed sign. 4, add project name, address, and revision dates and sheet numbers on elevation exhibits. 5, add material and color labels on all elevation sheets.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I move to recommend.
No nays. Please continue.
And I move to recommend to the Village Board approval of the subdivision titled Preliminary Site Plan for Cobblestone by Design Tech Engineering Incorporated, Project 17-0033, dated 7/17/17, revised 3/5/18, subject to the following conditions. 1, submit a record plat of subdivision to the village for approval and recording.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No nays. Please continue.
And I move to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of the landscape plan titled Preliminary Landscape for Planned Cobblestone Subdivision prepared by Metz and Company dated 11/9/17, revised 2/6/18, sheets L-1 and L-2, as amended to meet below conditions. 1, obtain preliminary landscape plan approval from the village consultant Hay and Associates. 2, include a tree mitigation report as part of the landscape plan. 3, final tree mitigation requirements are to be determined at the time of development agreement. 4, submit a final landscape plan within 60 days of final engineering for review and approval.
Second.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No nays. Please continue.
And I move to recommend to the Village Board approval of a special use permit for an R4 district residential plan development subject to the same conditions as outlined in the preliminary site plan motion. Modifications of the special use permit include: 1, reduce building-to-building and building-to-property side setbacks from 25 feet to 20 feet. 2, increase the maximum cul-de-sac length from 400 feet to 550 feet. 3, increase the maximum pond slope from 3 to 1. 4, reduce the required retention pond setback and flat maintenance strip. 5, modify tree mitigation requirements as finalized at the time of the development agreement. 6, reduce sidewalk and parkway requirements to allow 4-foot wide carriage walks with no parkway on both sides of the private street.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No nays. The petition carries unanimously for recommendation to the village board through the committee for approval for the distance. Good luck, gentlemen. If all goes well, welcome to Orland Park. Do we have any further business with staff? Mr.
Just,
Lee?
I do.
Mr. Hoda, I'm going to get to the commissioners in just a second. No? Commissioner Priest.
Not new business, just a comment. I hope it's appropriate. I'm sure we're all aware that our chairman, Louis Stevens, has decided to retire. Lou Stevens served on this committee for 17 years, 12 years as his chairman. I was privilege to sit with him for more than 10 of those years. I will say that I learned quite a bit from him, and that he provided a lot of intel to all of us fellow board members, and a lot of his ideas and suggestions and everything always had the best interest of the village at heart, and I really appreciate his service, and I think he was a credit to the village, and I wish him all the best.
Your comments are on the record, Commissioner. Any further comments from staff or our friends up on the dais here? There are none. Meeting stands adjourned at 8:24. Thank you very much.